We are going to spend a lot of the day thinking about the way that digital intelligence is going to change the world. And we thought it would be interesting to take a moment to think about how all this interaction with computers might be changing us. So we're going to have a brief conversation about that question, and who better to talk about it than Sherry Turkle, who's a sociologist from MIT, who spent 3 decades looking at the way that we interact with computers. So Sherry, please. Hi, good to see you. Please. So you've been on something of an evolutionary journey. That I think it's fair to say that some time ago you were a great fan of technology, and now you've evolved to a point at which many might describe you as a critic. Tell me very briefly about that journey.
Well, actually, I'm not so much a critic. I don't think of myself as anti-technology. I'm pro-conversation. And so...
Oh, we have a problem with the microphone? Do you want to try again?
I don't think of myself as a critic. I'm not anti-technology. I'm pro-conversation. So my criticism really is of technology where if we were sitting together, and this has become something that just people do, I would say to you, well, just hold on a second, I need to check my phone, and then come back to you as though I had put you on pause. I mean, that's kind of that's my kind of criticism, is where technology stands in the way of the kinds of conversations where intimacy thrives, where empathy thrives. In terms of my evolution, how I got started was being very pro and excited about technology, because I thought that technology was starting a lot of new kinds of conversations. And this was in the late 1970s, at the birth of the personal computer movement. I call the computer a second self, because I saw the way people were really looking at what they put on their screens as a projection of who they were, and had a relationship with these technologies that really was more intense and involved than the relationship they had with cars or stereos, because they saw the computer and their own computer really as a reflection of their own minds.
But that is just enhanced now. That is more the case now, and yet your feeling about the effect that that's having has become more negative.
Well, now we're in a different space where the phones that we carry, the mobile technologies that we carry, are not just a projection of ourselves, but connect us, with the world of other people in ways that paradoxically can interrupt our involvement with other people. And I think that's the kind of paradoxical moment we're at, where we're just figuring out how to make sure that these phones keep us in contact with the world rather than really cut short our contact with the world. So for example, research shows that if I put a phone down on the table, if we were having lunch, 2 things would happen. What we talked about would become more trivial at that lunch, because people wouldn't want to be interrupted, and so the conversation kind of flattens out to more trivial things, and then also the parties in the conversation feel less empathically connected to each other. So what you want to do is not use your phone, but you want to think about not putting your phone out during lunch. You want to think about not putting your phone out when you're having breakfast with your children.
That sounds pretty hard to do. I can't imagine children listening to that instruction.
Well, no, actually, I found that it's the other way around, that I found a generation of children who were kind of tugging at the sleeves of their parents, asking for more attention. So I'm optimistic, because I think the children who are growing up now are growing up kind of asking for attention from parents who were often too preoccupied with
And this is a
phone.
generation of children in America, which is kind of very tech-savvy.
Yes.
Can you globalize this view at all, or is the research very much based on an American
Yes, no,
cohort?
I am globalizing this view, because I think that children desiring attention and not getting eye contact with parents and not feeling that they're having the attention, but rather are sort of being, kind of one in many things that, you know, we have baby bouncers that have a slot for an iPad. We have potty trainers that have a slot for an iPad. These are technologies that are global technologies that are being marketed globally, and that these are technologies that show, I think, that we haven't put this technology in its place, because these are moments where children need our attention, need eye contact, need our, you know, really full attention.
Okay, and one of the things that's going to be discussed today is also the movement towards social devices that take on the role of a person and do things for you and interact with you. So that's a different dimension on this. How do you feel about those?
Well, I would say that the two technologies that brought me to a more critical position were, on the one hand, the sort of always on you technologies that we've been discussing. And then the second one was the development of social robotics, sociable technologies that are of a certain sort. The ones that I think we need to rethink or think very carefully about are the ones that pretend empathy. Because in all of the wonderful intelligence that we've been talking about that machines can have, the thing that they can't have, and that I think we interfere with children's development when we pretend they can, is that they can't have human empathy. They can't have had the experiences that a human being has gone through. And so as in my own development as a researcher, I began to see machines that evoked in children the feeling that they were with machines that pretended empathy, I was also caught short and felt that there was something to be concerned with here. But not just children, also the elderly, because I think we have a tendency to think that we can give as companions, for example, machines that pretend empathy, both to children and also to the elderly. And I think in the case of the elderly, break our compact with them to hear their stories by people who can understand the stories they're telling. So I was doing research with one woman who was trying to talk about the death of a child and to a robot that was pretending to understand, and of course it did not, and it was heartbreaking.
I mean, I suppose that there are always replacements for human empathy. There have always been pets. Children have cuddly toys with which they empathize to a certain degree. So this is just a new dimension of it and just needs to be handled in the same way as we handle those other things.
No, I don't agree. A cuddly toy is a passive object on which a child projects the child's feelings. So, for example, a child who's just broken her mother's crystal will put her Barbie dolls in detention in order to, you know, have a chance to work through her guilt on the doll that she projects guilt onto. So dolls have always been a way to play with and deal with the child's own feelings. If you have a doll that comes to you pretending to have a life, have its own guilt, you're dealing with something very different, and one that I think we have to make sure the child isn't themselves silenced.
Happily, there's time for you to explore all of this more in one of the afternoon panels this afternoon. But let me just close, and I have to police my own timekeeping better than everybody else, I guess. But let me just close by asking, what would take it for you to evolve back to a position of being very positive?
I would be very positive. Well, I think actually right now, what makes me positive is I think that we are becoming more sensitive. I see, I mean, this, of course, I'm talking about my own country. I think that the generation who grew up with devices are starting to put away devices when it is time to have a conversation, and are becoming more, you know, aware of not wanting to, well, to keep that break, and, you know, to not have that break in eye contact, and to make sure that conversations happen.
Well, thank you for this device-free conversation. Thank you.
Device-free conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.